At the back, I'll tell you what my mother used. I always tell my mother, who at 90 still sits on the third last row of the sanctuary, which is seats 1,200. And she says she can't hear the preacher. And I've suggested to her numerous times, have you ever thought about moving forward? To fill out some of the dead spaces in the front. So I'm not going to say that to you, but I do say that to my mother on a regular basis. And some of you have asked me how I felt this week. And thank you for your kindness of that. It has been a lousy week. I lost my Tigger. I had no energy. And then about Wednesday, I lost my voice. And experienced something I'd never experienced before. When you've lived your life, in your career, depending on your voice, you can imagine if you're leading worship and all of a sudden you have no voice. I couldn't believe the anxiety I was feeling about Sunday and coming here and preaching. And I think in some ways it probably caused more problems in my voice because I was so anxious. But this is the best voice I've had in a few days. And I can actually hear myself. So I was a soprano about 2 days ago, if you had heard me. If you have your Bibles, I really do want to thank you for inviting me to be here more than once. You may not be thankful, but I am. Most of what I do now is speaking at conferences and speaking one-shot experiences in churches and things like that. And if you're a pastor at heart, which I am, you really don't like it as much. I know I've said this to you before, but what's wonderful about coming and thinking, knowing some of you and also knowing you can build on something, it makes it just a lot more fun. I'm not sure you're allowed to have fun at preaching, but it just makes it a lot more fun to be with you and knowing that if I screw up today, I can make up for it the next week I come back. But also you can build on something. As I've been studying the Beatitudes for this series, I've just been so conscious of how critical it is. These few verses that, as I said last week, Donald Bosch says we spent the last 2,000 years trying to explain away. Because in many ways, E. Stanley Jones used to call the Beatitudes the manifesto of the kingdom. This is our bottom line. This is how life should be lived. This is how life could be lived. This is about the rhythm of what life could be about. If you've been following the Supreme Court decision this week, no matter where you stand on that debate, what happens in a society in which there no longer is a God at the center? G.K. Chesterton's great line was that when people cease to believe in God, they don't believe in nothing, but they believe in anything. And so you see us in a more and more secular Canada hanging our hats on things that we put our trust in. And every time we do that, we create an even more complex world to navigate and negotiate without God. And that's the struggle. Years ago, I went to a lecture of someone who was talking about mountain climbing. For you who know that I'm not an outdoors person, I can't remember why I went. I think a friend of mine, it might have even been a girlfriend. This was my pre-Carla days. She was a mountain climber, and so I was really into mountain climbing at the moment. And so I went, and this guy stood up and he said, "Why do people climb mountains?" Right? You've heard that question before. And so everybody gave the answer that everybody usually gives. Because it's there. And he said, no. He said, no. He said, people climb mountains because They want to find the place of convergence. He said, when you climb a mountain, when you get to the top of it, you can see the perspective of everything around you, and you can see where you've come from. And he said, when you get to the top, all of a sudden you have this sense of convergence. I think that's what the Christian life is all about. I mean, it's about giving us a perspective of bringing things together that help us understand what it is about life, what life is about, how it should be lived, what makes it meaningful, what makes it good. It's a place of convergence in which you can see above you, you can see all around you, but you can also understand where you've come from and what those themes are. That's why I think it's so critical for us today to look at these few verses here. I mean, you remember I said that the Beatitudes are these fascinating kind of blesseds in which they end up with the fact that they promise you that you will be out of sync with the rest of the world, and therefore you will be persecuted. It's a promise that you will not be in sync. Your rhythm will be slightly out of whack. Carla and I took ballroom dancing. Have any of you done ballroom dancing? How did he do? Not good, eh? Carla and I have a very distinct difference in what we believe about dancing. Carla believes that we should follow the steps. And I believe that you should kind of follow the music. And so oftentimes when we were ballroom dancing in these lessons, when I was supposed to go right, I just felt this deep desire to go left, which would always throw her. And finally the dance teacher came over and said, let me see if I can try to help him. And she came to me and she tried a couple of dances with me, and then she looked at Carla and she said, there is no hope for this guy. I wonder if that's what it's like to be a person of faith in a world like we live in Canada. That there's this sense that the rhythm that we're working to is very, very different than the rhythm that is around us. And that at times, it's one thing to be persecuted because you're obnoxious. Right? I mean, I know lots of Christians who deserve to be persecuted. You know, they're just absolutely obnoxious people. But the fact is, it's a whole nother thing to be persecuted because you're living in a rhythm that just does not fit the times that you're in. And as much as you want to fit in, and as much as there's all of those kinds of things, there are times where, as if you learn the dance of the Christian faith, if you learn this dance of the Beatitudes, and you learn the rhythms, if you learn the kind of true north of these values that these Beatitudes call us to, that there are times that you're walking against stream. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a great picture of all these sheep, you know, and they're all going in one direction. And then there's this sheep going in the wrong direction, saying, excusez-moi, 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 you know. Well, I think sometimes that's who we are. We're a people who sometimes find ourselves slightly out of sync. That's what the challenge is today in these Beatitudes. You remember that I said that the Beatitudes are always, that the Christian life has always been intrusive news. I mean, it wasn't made to kind of make you feel comfortable. It was made to turn you upside down and to turn you inside out.
And the tragedy that is that during Christendom, we spent so much time making it acceptable and societally kind of comfortable that we lost our edge. I have a paper I wrote a number of years ago where I said that when everybody complains about the secularization of Canada and the marginalizing of the church, I blame the church for its own marginalization. It lost its edge. It lost its ability to speak prophetically into the culture because it began to look so much like the culture. Its values were wrapped up in a world that didn't... we were no longer intrusive or prophetic enough to speak. And therefore we no longer had anything to say. So, these first few blesseds, I was teasing. One of our friends from Edmonton is in town with us today. And I told her I did one word last week, blessed. And she said, "Oh, are you going to do R now?" Nothing sacred amongst my friends. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. These are the natural journeys inward. This is the first part of the Beatitudes, the journey inward. This is the upside down kingdom values, this antithetical way to our contemporary culture. Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," and we say, "Blessed are the achievers," who are self-made people. I did it my way. Have you ever thought how stupid that song is? I did it my way. Blessed. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn." And we say, "Blessed are those who do not allow themselves to be hurt or to suffer." Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek." And we say, "Blessed are the powerful." Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who know, if you want, that they need God. I often tell my students this, and it bothers them. But when I became a Christian, it was in university. And frankly, the idea of heaven and hell never entered into it in my thinking. I don't know if that makes me a bad person or not. I wasn't profoundly aware of my sin. It wasn't that I didn't know I was. I knew that I was a sinner, but it wasn't that I wasn't particularly motivated by the idea of getting to heaven when I die. It didn't make much sense to me. I was 18, but what made sense to me was the stupidity of my life. I was at the University of Manitoba playing football and majoring in nap room at the Student Union building, which is why I got 5 Fs my first year at university. And literally, I was in a good place in many ways. But I came out of a party one night and was walking to my car, and I had this profound sense that this was stupid. That it just made no sense. That there had to be more to life than the way, not just the way I was living it, but the way I thought about it. From that day on, my sense, I'm not one of those people who thinks I gave up very much when I became a follower of Christ. I don't regret one thing. For me, it has made all the difference. When Paul says in Corinthians, he says, "I no longer look at people the way I used to." mean, my whole life was turned inside out, not because I was profoundly aware of my sinfulness, but because I was profoundly aware of my life without God. That without God, I did not have a core. I did not have a place of convergence. It made no sense to me. I read a book a long time ago, M. Scott Peck. He said, mental health is the unswerving commitment to reality. The reality that we cannot live life alone, self-sufficiently. The idea that we need God. That's my faith journey. Is this understanding. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who know they need God, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, who allow themselves to feel deeply, to feel compassionately for others' pain. Not just feel deeply and mourn with them, but to actually feel their pain. This is the cry of the inner life, to be vulnerable to others, to be open to care, to be open to be hurt, and to feel it in others. I mean, one of the sad dialogues in this debate that's been going on, for instance, in doctor-assisted suicide, is how much of this is about our inability to watch other people go through pain. Again, I'm not telling you where you should stand on this issue, but how much of this is our own unwillingness to struggle with other people's pain? I'd rather they not be in pain. The first beatitude is the end of the self-made person. But this beatitude is the beginning of the lover. This is the beginning of the person who actually opens themselves up to other people. I was listening to Billy Joel the other day. You remember Billy Joel? Carla and I just went and saw Cat Stevens a couple of months ago. So that was great. He has a song, Innocent Man. Listen to the lyrics. Some people stay far away from the door if there's a chance of it opening up. They hear a voice in the hall outside and they hope that it just passes by. Some people live with the fear of a touch and the anger of having been a fool. They will not listen to anyone, so nobody tells them a lie. I know you're only protecting yourself. I know you're thinking of somebody else, someone who hurt you, because I'm an innocent man. How much of our lives are lived protected? My mother uses the term, we don't want to air our dirty laundry. In the church, I used to say to my mother, well, if you can't air your dirty laundry in the church, then where can you air your dirty laundry? I suppose, well, I won't get into that. I mean, this idea of mourning, I mean, it's so easy to build the shell that protects ourselves from other people. But this idea of mourning is the idea of being open to others, to feeling others, to getting angry, not just guilty, but angry about the injustice that you see. Angry and desirous to be a part of the pain. Our friend who's here today with us, visiting us from Edmonton, we had a mutual friend named Peggy. And at about the same time, both Anne and Peggy got cancer. It was the weirdest thing. Anza was on the medical faculty of the University of Alberta. So she decided she would learn everything she possibly could about the pain, the cancer that she had. She became an expert in that particular area nobody knew about because it was an obscure cancer. And if you knew our friend who's here, you'd understand that that's what she'd do with anything. You know, she's going to learn about it, she's going to study it, she's going to know it. Our other friend, Peggy, she just rolled up into a fetus position for a number of months and just kind of gutted it out, as only Peggy would have gutted it out. We had a wonderful party a number of years ago where we celebrated. It was the end of the 5th year, and so we called it the "Now That You're Going to Live" party. You know, if you've ever had cancer, you know how the 5th year is a significant event. Peggy was she was a teacher. She was a simple person. Life was simple for her. She cared for people. Some people saw her as gruff, but she actually wasn't. She was a great golfer. My favorite Peggy story is the time she and I went golfing, and these two macho guys joined us. And on the first hole, the guy said to Peggy, "Well, little lady, you're up." And I went, "Oh, geez." Because I knew what Peggy was going to do. And she proceeded to get up, knock it straight down the fairway, and continued to do that through the whole game. And these guys were so intimidated that by about the 10th hole, their balls were going left and right and into the rough and into the water and all that. And she beat them soundly. I just enjoyed watching. And then she putted in the 18th hole, and she got it in. And she picked the ball out of the hole, and she said, "Not bad for a little lady." That was Peggy. But she hated her cancer. She just absolutely hated it. She hated its disability. She hated everything about it. She hated the disempowerment. She didn't like pain. But when she got better, she hated the Cross Clinic at the University of Alberta. She just absolutely hated the place. But she decided that she would pick up patients and drive them to the Cross Clinic on a weekly basis. Blessed are those who mourn. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, she decided to enter into their pain because she knew it. What happens when we protect ourselves so often? When we live our lives so kind of out of touch with the world, so protective. Those who mourn are the people that feel both deeply joy and both deeply pain. You probably know this. But some of the best people I know are the people who I've laughed with and I've cried with. I mean, who've known who I was at my darkest moments and have known what I'm like. And isn't this the interesting promise? Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. In other words, they will know God. They will know His presence. I think that in the darkest moments of my own personal life, it's been those times, just knowing that God is there, that has been the most critical things. Look at the psalmist. Why do people always go to the Psalms when they're in pain? Because the psalmist understood this. That sometimes in the deepest, darkest places that you're feeling, all you have is comfort. Finally, blessed are the meek. Geez, that's a word we hate. I have yet to see a person play Jesus that I liked in a film. I don't know about you. It's this. They're trying to figure out how do you portray this idea of Jesus meek and mild. You know, we have this kind of profoundly negative kind of illustration of what that is about. Blessed are the meek. It's interesting. I've heard this years ago, but it is an interesting Greek word that Jesus uses here. It's the same word, it's praos. It's the same word that's used for a war horse, interestingly enough. It's the idea of controlled strength. Those big war horses that would go into battle, and there would be people fighting around them, and they were able to stay controlled in the midst of this. Isn't that interesting? That meekness is about being strong enough to be grounded. That you don't just overreact or etc., etc. Blessed are the meek. A couple of years ago, we had a suicide at Tyndale, young student. I watched one of my colleagues, while all of the other colleagues, many of them kind of overreacted to what was going on. And oftentimes made it about them, which was even worse. But I watched one of my colleagues, Barry. I think I understood this word meekness. His ability to feel, but to stay grounded, and to not make it about him, not make it about, but to deal with the situation as it was. Blessed are the meek. One of the things I wanted to cry out during this debate this week, and again, I'm not telling you where you should stand on this, but many times I wanted to cry out, did you ever think it's not about you and your experience? That this is about what a society is making a decision about, and how we think this through isn't just about how I felt in the midst of this. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Some of you know that I love C.S. Lewis and I love the Chronicles. In one of the books, The Magician's Nephew, this inner journey is such a critical thing, because it's in the inner journey that I am grounded enough to then live in my outer journey. It's the place. Nouwen used to say, the most important thing that you can know is that you are the beloved of God. Because once you know you're the beloved of God, you can do anything. You can sit. You can live secured in that. And that's what these first three Beatitudes are about. And in The Magician's Nephew, there's this wonderful place in the story where Diggory, the young boy, is asked by Aslan to go on this long and dangerous journey. And if you know the story, Diggory's concerned about his mother who's not well. And as Aslan asks him this question to go on this journey, Diggory blurts out, "But please, no, won't you let me help my mother?" I mean, all the time that he's asking this, Diggory is staring at these great claws of Aslan with a sense of awe about those claws. And Aslan makes this low growl. He doesn't answer Diggory. He just kind of growls. If you know, Aslan's the Christ figure in the Chronicles. And all he does is this low growl. And as he does that, Diggory looks up from the paws and he looks at the face of Aslan. And when he sees Aslan, all of a sudden he sees in Aslan and in his eyes tears. Instantly, Diggory realizes that Aslan loves his mother as much as he does. That he hurts as much as he hurts. And in that, Lewis says, Diggory finds comfort and courage. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, who feel, for they shall be comforted.